If there was one thing that could be safely said about Sunset Shimmer, it was that she was, without question, not a morning person. Despite her name, the sun was no friend to her, at least not in these early hours, and the dawn was an utter bane to her as it disturbed her carefully cultivated feeling of comfort during the deep slumber she gained for herself. Such was the case for her today, sadly, as the light began to creep in through the tiniest gaps in between her two curtains. Moment by moment, it stretched along her floor, up her bed, before falling right onto her eye. Instantly it snapped open, and she slapped a free hand over it in a vain attempt to keep the light out of her sight. She knew it was all for naught, but she tried all the same, grumbling to herself as consciousness at last came to her. The expression she wore made it clear that she was not happy at having been woken, but that face soon changed to a soft and warm smile. For the one good thing she could say about her situation right now was who she was looking at.
Hey.
Twilight, too, was stirring from her sleep, her glassesless eyes slowly creeping open. And like Sunset, she too smiled at seeing her beloved right across from her.
Hey yourself.
Chuckling, Sunset scooted on closer to her, giving her a tender kiss on the end of her nose.
You know, Sunset, you're probably going to get tired of doing that every morning,
Twilight remarked. Sunset rolled her eyes.
Not likely.
Giggling, Twilight allowed herself a moment to stretch, all while Sunset was content to just lay there and stare at her, smiling over just how pretty she looked in the early mornings when her hair was unkempt like that. Twilight, after having let out the mother of all yawns, rubbed some dust out of her eyes before squinting around the room. After fumbling around for a bit, she reached for her glasses, and after placing them over her eyes, she looked at the clock on the bedside table.
Well, I probably should get up. I've got a lot to do today.
And here was where Sunset's smile faded, replaced instead with a look of horror. She watched as her girlfriend reached for the edge of the covers, ready to pull them off and enable herself to get out of bed. This was where Sunset struck, reaching out immediately and wrapping her arms around Twilight's waist, holding her back.
What? Sunset?
But Sunset said nothing, just continuing to hold the spectacled girl close to her, never letting up her embrace. Her cheeks puffed up with her pure refusal to be parted from the other girl. Twilight, on her side of things, sighed, adjusting her glasses slightly before commenting on this.
Sunset, you're gonna have to let go of me at some point.
But Sunset just held on tighter.
No. More Snuggles.
Twilight tried to get out, but alas, her lover's grip was too strong. So strong, in fact, that she even started to get pulled back from the edge of the bed and more towards the middle.
Sunset, we can't just lay in bed all day. There's stuff to do, places to be, and...
But Sunset wasn't having any of it, burying her face in Twilight's back as she continued to hold her.
Didn't hear a word of that, Sunset.
I said I'm not going anywhere. And neither are you.
Twilight, in spite of her initial annoyance at being kept in this one spot, found herself giggling again, before reaching behind herself and giving Sunset a pat on the head.
All right, Sunset, you've had your fun. Now let me go. There's a brand new day, and we have to go out and greet it.
Sunset's response to this was to let out a feral hiss towards the shaft of light still peeking through the curtains, before promptly shuffling Twilight around in her embrace. Now the two were face to face, exactly how Sunset liked it, and she smiled contently before smushing her cheek against hers. Twilight, blinking to this increasingly inescapable scenario, soon sighed.
So, is this gonna be our whole day? Just you and me snuggling in bed without any chance of leaving it or doing anything?
Sunset considered that, then shrugged.
Meh. I can think of worse ways to spend my day.
When you said you weren't a morning person, I didn't think you meant it this much.
Mornings are evil. All they do is wake up from dreams, and make it so that I can't keep hugging my Twilight-shaped pillow.
Your what?
Sunset was unconcerned, however, and regained her content smile as she continued to rub cheeks with her, holding her even tighter in that warm embrace of hers.
Shh. Don't you worry. Sunset's got you. We've got all day together.
Twilight had, understandably, just about had enough from all this, and took a deep breath.
Sunset, forgive me.
Sunset had no idea what she meant by that, but she had no time to ask, as there was suddenly a massive poof of smoke from out of nowhere. In a panic, Sunset let go, coughing and spluttering to herself after this surprise attack. But her senses soon came back to her, and she looked on in horror at Twilight, who was now standing beside the bed, somehow fully dressed, all while triumphantly holding a trio of tiny black balls in her hand.
Smoke bombs. Gotta thank Pinky for those later.
Sunset, dismayed that she'd lost her favored snuggling companion, spread out over her bed, grabbing hold of the nearest pillow and burying her face in it, releasing a groan of annoyance as she did so. Twilight rolled her eyes, then reached over and gave her a quick pat on the shoulder.
Tell you what, when the day's over, we can go to bed early to squeeze in an extra hour of snuggling.
Throwing away the pillow, Sunset looked to her like a puppy expecting a treat.
You mean it?
Twilight made an X sign over where her heart was.
I promise.
Sunset smiled, accepting this, but then grumbled as she sat upright on her bed and folded her arms.
All right. I guess I gotta go and be part of the morning then.
Twilight giggled, leaning forward and giving her a quick kiss on the cheek.
Good girl.